Kicking off at number 5, Coral Castle. And no, that is not my imitation of Rick Grimes trying to call his son a fortified structure. Sorry, that was a terrible joke. But the actual mystery of Coral Castle is equal parts true engineering enigma and equal parts perhaps the most American thing that you've ever heard of. Along the highways and byways of rural America, there are countless tourist attractions that litter the way, but one of them in particular may actually have a much more intriguing mystery than the rest. Just before 1920, a Latvian man named Edward Liwei was jilted by his young bride just a day before their wedding, and so dejected and depressed, Edward left his home country to head to America. Here, after becoming a recluse and discovering a strange affinity for magnetism, Edward spent the next 28 years constructing a bizarre megalithic castle from oolite, a limestone sediment similar to coral. Now, although the vast majority of this structure now is ruinous, which operates as a popular tourist attraction on the roadside, the actual structural properties of Coral Castle have baffled people for decades. Given the fact that Liwei worked completely alone, shifting over 1,000 tons of oolite rock into place with no conventional machinery and no other means of hauling such a large amount of minerals and materials. As the legend goes, at one point a few local teenagers claimed to have stumbled upon Liwei working on the structure late at night, reporting that he had caused the blocks of coral to move like hydrogen balloons, floating perfectly into place without the aid of any tools. Strangely enough, this led to wild rumours that Liwei was using telekinesis to build the castle, a claim which he refuted. In fact, the only tool that Liwei ever spoke of using was a machine that he referred to as a perpetual motion holder. Before his death, whenever he was asked how he constructed the place, he simply stated that he understood the laws of weight and leverage well, and on several occasions he stated publicly that he had discovered the secrets of the pyramids, and that once you know how to do it, it's easy. I mean, this one is a little tongue-in-cheek, but what do you guys think? Another eccentric recluse with too much time on his hands, or a structural genius that had insight into a long forgotten knowledge? Let me know. Coming in at number 4, Kaspar Hauser. And who the hell was Kaspar Hauser? A mystery that has completely perplexed historians for nearly 2 centuries, leading to an insane web of speculation, an entire network of conspiracy that extends its tendrils all the way to the royalty of Napoleon. On the 26th of May 1828, a teenage boy appeared on the streets of Nuremberg, Germany. His name was Kaspar, a boy of 16. He was filthy, could speak only a few words, and had a letter with him addressed to a captain of the Bavarian cavalry. He kept repeating the phrase, "I want to be a cavalryman as my father was," in Old Bavarian, but the city guard dismissed his ramblings and imprisoned him as just another vagabond in Nuremberg Castle. His strange origin drew the attention of the city's mayor, who claimed that despite his stunted appearance, the boy had an excellent memory and was quick to learn. Eventually, after befriending the mayor, Kaspar spoke of what he could remember of his life before, and explained in great detail at living totally alone in a darkened cell 2 meters long, 1 meter wide. Each morning, Kaspar said, he would wake to find rye bread and water next to his bed. Periodically, he said the water would taste bitter, and after drinking it, he would sleep more heavily than usual, where he'd wake up to find his hair and his nails had been cut. Kaspar claimed that the first human he had contact with was a mysterious man dressed in a dark hood, his face completely covered. He taught him to write his name and taught him the same phrase he would repeat when he was found. Eventually, this story led the European aristocracy to believe that Kaspar was an exiled prince, held captive for his entire life to prevent a line of succession. As the year passed, Kaspar would live and learn in many of the Bavarian noble houses, where allegedly there were many attempts on his life by the same hooded men that he had described in the darkened cell. They got him in the end though, and on the 14th of December 1833 he was mysteriously stabbed and he died 3 days later. On his grave in Latin read the words, "Here lies a mysterious one who was killed in a mysterious manner." Beats me.
In at 3, Lars Matank. Lars Matank was a 28-year-old German man vacationing at a seaside resort in Bulgaria with a group of friends. On July 6, 2014, however, Lars got into a fight with a group of men, resulting in Lars suffering from a ruptured eardrum. When it came time for him and his friends to fly home, doctors wouldn't allow it, so Lars booked a room at a cheap hotel. This is when things started to take a weird turn. Lars began to act odd, as seen on some of the hotel's CCTV footage. He texted his mother saying he didn't feel safe in the hotel and that she should cancel all of his credit cards. He also told her that he was being followed by 4 men. Lars packed up his things and headed for an airport. However, the last anyone has seen of Lars was seen on CCTV footage captured in and outside the airport. Shows Lars walking in carrying a bag and soon after running out of the airport and into the woods, never to be seen or heard from again. In it too, Emma Filipov. Emma Filipov is a Canadian woman who went missing on November 28, 2012 in British Columbia at the age of 26. Now, leading up to her disappearance, it was believed that Emma was planning to move back to Ontario, where she originated from. She had hired a tow truck and driver to tow her car to the Chateau Victoria parking garage. On November 23rd, she was captured on CCTV footage entering the YMCA. She entered and exited multiple times, seemingly avoiding someone on the outside. On November 28th, Emma was once again captured on CCTV, this time though entering a 7-Eleven and purchasing a prepaid cell phone. She seemed to be acting strangely, hesitating and repeatedly checking the streets outside. Later that night, Dennis Coy called 911 to report a woman outside a hotel who appeared to be in some severe distress. It was Emma. The police arrived, interviewed her for 45 minutes and left, deeming her no threat to herself or anybody else. This was the last time anyone saw Emma. And finally, in at number 1, John Lang. The story of John Lang is truly baffling, and one that still gets conspiracy theorists' minds going. John Lang lived in Fresno, California, and before his death was tackling police harassment. This included license plate scams in low-income neighborhoods. He would post about these incidents online, giving Lang a platform in his neighborhood. However, shortly after this began, he reported unsettling people outside his home, a van using a heat sensor camera to record him, and policemen watching him from across the street at night. Lang became increasingly more paranoid, even posting about the weird goings-on on his Facebook, even hinting at his own death. A few days later, Lang's house burned to the ground, killing him in the process. Before his final moments though, Lang uploaded a video describing and showing some of the strange people stalking his home. Take a look.
Kicking off at number 5, Stone Tongue. Which again is a pretty damn awesome name for a death metal band, right? But if you're a fan of this series, you'll already know that lists like these are literal golden skull mines for naming yourselves in all your death metal glory. So metalheads that are looking for a band name, take note, please. And also, thank me later. Anyway, Stone Tongue. Let's first cast our gaze back to 1991 in Northamptonshire, Britain, where archaeologists discovered a gruesome and even stranger mutilation that emerged from the remains of Roman Britain. Now, it's no hidden secret that Britain is littered with instances of intrigue from the Roman occupation of Britain, but this one in particular seemingly doesn't fit any sort of logic, or any of the many other mysteries of ancient Britain. At the bottom of a burial pit, buried beneath dozens of other bodies, archaeologists found the skeleton of a man whose tongue had apparently been amputated and instead replaced with a flat stone wedged into his mouth. The burial site at Stanwick near the River Nene dates back from between the 3rd or 4th centuries, where people in Roman Britain would have congregated in small farming communities. Now, it's certainly not rare to find makeshift burial pits in Roman Britain. In fact, they are a dime a dozen. But the strange thing was, this guy was buried at the bottom, face down. And not only was he buried face down, which would usually indicate some sort of fear of him by the community, but his tongue was cut out and replaced with a stone. As researchers noted, this was something that just hasn't ever been identified as a practice so far in archaeological records. There are no other known occurrences of this ever happening in Roman Britain, so far anyway. And the fact that this was on top of the matter of him being buried face down, well, who the hell was he? What was he doing? It is believed that the man would have been in his 30s at the time of his death, and one theory is that he had mental health issues and was actually responsible for severing his own tongue. Perhaps the tongue was the community symbolically making him whole again, but then why was he buried face down? Now, archaeologists are currently trying to correlate this practice to ancient Germanic laws, but its place in a small farming community in Roman Britain, yeah, that remains a complete and utter mystery. Swinging in at number 4, Cat Shabib. And I absolutely love this one, as well as pretty much all of the next few entries, because nothing gets my mind whirring quite like an ancient structure that no one knows what the hell it is, or what it was doing, or why it was even there. Let me introduce you to the Cat Shabib, an ancient wall in southern Jordan that since its identification by British diplomat Sir Alec Kirkbride back in 1948 has had archaeologists scratching their heads ever since. I say identification because Kirkbride certainly didn't discover this structure per se, but instead he noticed that whilst he was flying over Jordan there was a very apparent and very clear line across the geographical landscape. A wall, in fact, that ran 150 kilometers, making it the longest linear archaeological site in Jordan. Now, why would anyone build a wall of such length? Now, the Romans had reason to with the Picts, ancient China had reason to with Genghis Khan, but Kat Shabib? What's that all about? The thing is though, whilst the purpose of this wall is the frantic subject of debate, we do know who built it. The semi-nomadic Bedouin people led by the Arab prince Amir Shabib. Historically, there is a certain recognition of the Bedouin people using the wall, but there is still no concrete evidence to determine its purpose. Archaeologists during the 1940s and 1950s argued that the Kat Shabib was used for military and defense purposes. However, there is a clear problem with that assumption. This wall is far too low for it to have ever been a successful defensive mechanism, and although it is massive in length, at best estimates it stood at around just 1.5 meters high. What was it keeping out? Not a lot. So then why have archaeologists also discovered over 100 ruined towers across its span? Yeah, more and more questions. Oh, and also, did I mention that best estimates point toward it being built in the Iron Age? Yeah, Kat Shabib, everybody. A complete and utter mystery.
Number 3. Liwei Chow. Liwei Chow is an American astronaut and one of considerable renown. Chow's flown 3 missions and he served as the commander on Expedition X, a 6.5-month long voyage living on the International Space Station. Expedition X. That does kind of sound more like a raging house party than a NASA mission, but to each their own. In 2005, Chow and another astronaut were outside installing navigation antennas on board the ISS, some 230 miles above the Earth, floating at 17,000 miles per hour, and Chow saw something bizarre in the sky that he couldn't understand. Why don't we take a listen? I saw some lights that seemed to be in a line, and it was almost like an upside down check mark, kind of like an upside down Nike swoosh. And I saw them fly by, and I thought it was awfully strange. Chow would tell the Huffington Post this. The cosmonaut with him didn't see the lights in time, facing the other way entirely. Imagine that, missing the aliens because you were looking the wrong way. Embarrassing. Some have speculated that the lights could have been the lights from a squid fishing boat from Earth, which use these incredibly bright lights when fishing at night for squid, and these have been reported erroneously as UFO sightings or bizarre phenomena in space all the time with these strange green lights. It pops up. There was something that happened similarly on the ISS on a live feed they were doing where these lights went by and people thought they were an alien craft, but really just a squid boat. So it's not entirely unreasonable to think this. Now, Chow himself is skeptical of whether or not what he saw is alien in origin. Although, and I think this is important, he's open to the idea of it. He's open to this discussion. Listen to what he said. He said, "I'm skeptical of claims that we've been visited by aliens from another planet or another dimension, but I don't rule it out 100%. I have an open mind, and I do believe there's other life in the universe. But if there is life out there that's so much more advanced than we are, and they either know how to travel great distances in short amounts of time, or they're able to come from parallel universes into ours, well, why don't they just come and show themselves?" Well, maybe they did, Liwei. Maybe that was them extending an olive branch and trying to show themselves and they were just being a little bit shy, and you're just being skeptical. Yeah, well, you know, maybe we just have to make them feel really welcome. Arms open, say, "Come on in, guys. We're ready for you." Number 2, Story Musgrave. Story Musgrave. That's his real name. Story Musgrave. He's an interesting critter, bro. He was an astronaut. He's flown on 5 different space shuttles. He's got 6 different academic degrees, collecting them like they were the Infinity Stones. He's a public speaker, and now he's an Imagineer at Disney. Isn't that something? Making animatronics for Avatar World. He's got quite the career path. And he may also be the human that aliens have chosen to represent themselves to as their envoy. I get it though, look at the guy. He kind of looks like an alien, which might be why. Though he does look wise. If I was an alien, I'd contact him, definitely. He's academic, he's driven, he worked for the most powerful organization on Earth, and he worked at NASA. Story claims that on 2 different missions, he encountered a being looking like a giant snake that was sentient and recognized him. Take a listen to this. On 2 of my missions, and I still don't have an answer, I've seen a snake out there, 6, 7, 8 feet long. It's got waves in it and it follows you for a rather long period of time. You know, the more you fly in space, the more you see an incredible amount of things out there, and that sort of brings to you really a certain je ne sais quoi that other living creatures are out there. Some incredibly primitive, some just proteins coming together, and some just single-cell organisms. Well, single-cell organisms aside, what was that cell organism? Was it a floating hose that had come off the ship? Musgrave claiming that he'd seen the entity twice certainly raises an eyebrow, unless these ships are prone to breaking in the exact same hose. While he never said outright if he thought it was an alien or not, he did offer that he does believe there's intelligent life out there just waiting. Take a listen. Living creatures far more developed as civilizations. That's why I make an effort to communicate. And I might be considered eccentric because I do, but I know the probabilities are close to zero. But I do tell them to come down and get at me. And get at him you should, alien. Story Musgrave is out there waiting for you. He's got stories to tell you and you can tell him some stories. Number 1. Gordon Cooper. Major Gordon Cooper is a flying ace in his own right before conquering the stars. He was the first man in space to ever spend a full 24 hours by himself, which was probably just so lovely. Imagine all that me time. And he was the last American to ever spend a solo orbit around the planet. A real go-getter, real loner cowboy type. He was also reached out by aliens more than once in his life. Seems like aliens really pick and choose their favorites. When he was still a flying ace in 1951, he says over a test flight in West Germany, he encountered 3 flying metallic saucers following his plane. Now, he reported this bizarre incident to his superiors, but as far as we know, it was never followed up or investigated further. And this was only a few years after Roswell and Kenneth Arnold, the civilian pilot, would both make headlines as stories of flying saucers, so maybe the government was just tired of hearing about flying saucers for a bit and was like, yes, Cooper, yes, you totally saw some flying saucers. This wouldn't be the last close encounter of the third kind for Major Cooper, however. In 1963, on the Project 9 Mercury mission, Gordon was orbiting the Earth and returning home when he noticed a glowing green orb following behind him, which he described as looking ethereal. Now, whatever this ethereal glowing green orb was tracked on radar stations all the way down home down under in Australia, so it was a physical, tangible object, not some trick of the light, no squid boat here. Now, all of this would be a pretty strange set of coincidences as is, but when Gordon touched down back to Earth, he was ready for a press conference to entertain journalists' questions. Only NBC had told their reporters they were forbidden from asking any questions about what Gordon had seen, whether or not he believed in UFOs, or any questions about flying saucers or that sort of ilk. Isn't that curious? Was NASA covering something up? Could that green orb have been some hyper-advanced space-age technology? An envoy from a more advanced civilization? How many things can I speculate are aliens? All of them. Cooper has said before in the USA, every day our radar instruments capture objects of form and composition unknown to us. And there are thousands of witness reports and a quantity of documents to prove this, but no one wants to make them public. Why? Because authorities are afraid that people may think up God knows what kind of horrible invaders. We have to avoid panic. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into this little quote here from Major Gordon Cooper, but it sounds like he knows something about NASA higher-ups that they press down on stories involving things from beyond because they think we can't handle it, or that we need to avoid panic, or because they're worried that people like me are gonna say that they're aliens. Number 5. The Ghost Bride of Galvez. To Texans, it's no secret that Hotel Galvez is haunted. The Grand Galvez, as it's known now, first opened its doors in 1911, and since then has been said to be home to all manner of haunting, but the most retold story is that of Audra, the Ghost Bride of Galvez. Audra was a 25-year-old bride-to-be getting married there. Her betrothed was a young sailor who would frequently leave her on her lonesome while he was out on a voyage. During the periods where the sea would separate the two lovers, Audra would rent out room 501, climb out the ladder to the rooftop, and wait on the rooftop turret with love in her heart for her sweetheart to return. Now, one day during a catastrophic storm, Audra was told that her fiance's ship capsized, and overcome with grief, Audra took her own life on the roof of the hotel. Tragically, as if this wasn't sad enough, her groom would arrive a few days later, eager to surprise and re-encounter his bride as he'd survived the capsizing. And although he was never able to be with her physically again, if you believe the stories, she might still linger around the premises. Visitors claim that Audra frequents the 5th floor, and in particular, her spirit tends to hang around the matrimonial suite and room 501. Some claim they hear random doors slamming, or strong currents of chills, flickering lights, the usual who's who of a ghost haunting a hotel. Other stories tell of seeing a candle lit on the rooftop, wondering if it's the ghost of Audra still waiting for her beloved to come back to her. The attendants at the Galvez claim that there's difficulties making electronic keys for room 501 since they're prone to malfunction frequently. Visitors to the Galvez go out specifically looking for Audra now, hoping to catch a glimpse of the spirit. If you ever go to Texas, be sure to check it out if you're brave enough. And if you're looking for more freaky stories, true crime, ghosts, cryptids, basically the whole 9 yards, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. So click on that bell and click on through and subscribe and find someone to scream at. But Do that at the end of this video, okay? We got way more mysteries in Texas coming up. Number 4. The Icebox Killer. The Icebox Killer refers to an incredibly grisly crime that haunted Houston, and if you believe the conspiracies, might be entangled in a much larger web of interest. Take a listen to this brutal crime. On June 23, 1965, 2 Houston police officers were sent for a fairly benign wellness check and went to investigate the home of a suburban family, the Rogers, Fred and Edwina, and their son Charles. Edwina's nephew was concerned because he hadn't seen or heard from his aunt in a concerning amount of time. The 2 officers went to check the house and got no response from a knock. A look around in the backyard, they found a makeshift barricade on the back door, which was more than a little suspicious, so they entered the house. One of the 2 detectives opened the fridge instinctively and saw a pile of raw meat in the fridge. The detective dismissed it as boar or pig, and you can probably see where this is going. They opened the vegetable crisper and were disgusted at what they found: the heads of Edwina and Fred Rogers. Police suspected initially that the son Charles had been behind it, but why? No one was particularly sure. Now, here's where this already upsetting strange case gets wild. There are allegations that Charles Rogers was present the day of the JFK assassination, and some allege he was one of the 3 tramps photographed with police escort by Dealey Plaza. The conspiracy alleges that Charles Rogers, who was a former Marine and served in the Office of Naval Intelligence, was involved somehow in the larger assassination plot, and the claim is that somehow his parents discovered his involvement with the conspiracy and he had to silence them and flee. A bold claim, but Charles Rogers was never found. No proof of a body, despite being declared dead. Now, did he vanish? Or was he himself silenced to tie up a loose knot as part of something infinitely larger than himself? We may never truly have the answers for this one.
Next up at number 3, the mystery of Oak Island. And whilst many of you will know this particular entry, there's no denying the fact that the eternal mystery that is Oak Island is worth mentioning every single damn time, and its inception is an event that has long evaded the unscrupulous eye of history. You know the story, right? In Nova Scotia, just off the coast of eastern Canada, lies a small island that has allegedly been the site of our civilization's greatest of treasures, although no one has ever been able to locate the exact point of where that treasure lies, causing countless individuals to fall into a wild obsession with unearthing its eternal mystery. In fact, the cause of Oak Island's mystery is down to the fact people have found treasure there, many of which have been carbon dated to several hundred years old, and the story of the Money Pit, a mysterious shaft that has been excavated countless times throughout history, which actually exists with actual structural records, has forced dozens of businesses to go bankrupt trying to solve its enigma. So here we are with our mystery. Who the hell built this place? Now, there are hundreds of theories as to who would have constructed such an intricate place to conceal their treasure, the most popular being Captain William Kidd, the pirate that sailed to North America in the late 1600s, burying his plunder there so no one else could find it. Another theory states that the pit was constructed to house none other than Mary Antoinette's jewels, who after the Parisian uprising at the Palace of Versailles gave her treasures to a lady-in-waiting, who then fled France and ended up in Nova Scotia, where using her royal connections contracted the French Navy to construct the Oak Island pit, making sure that the incredibly rare jewels of her queen would never be discovered. And strangely enough, there has actually been credible evidence for this theory recently in 2017, when a 500-year-old brooch was discovered containing a huge garnet similar to that of which Mary Antoinette was reported to often wear. I mean, we could talk about all of these theories for an entire video, but as so far as unsolved events in history go, this one remains to be exactly that. Swinging in at number 2, the Yonaguni Monument. Okay, where do we even begin with this one? Because if you've seen any of our Ancient Mysteries series, then this one definitely deserves its place amongst their ilk. But the event that we're possibly alluding to in the case of the Yonaguni Monument may be a geological enigma that predates known civilization itself, involving an entire continent submerging deep beneath the ocean. Yeah, and whilst that may sound like a massive leap, let's just take a look at the strange properties of the Yonaguni Monument before we jump to any kind of conclusions. Off the coast of Japan, submerged beneath the southernmost Ryukyu Islands, lie a formation of potentially man-made monoliths, which has led to decades of debate as to the true nature of this strange geological formation. The monument itself consists of very fine sandstone and mudstone, with its main feature being a rectangular formation measuring about 90 feet tall and consisting of several other strange formations that seemingly don't make sense as to how they have been naturally formed. Now, despite this massive debate between the Yonaguni Monument being natural or man-made, made, perhaps the most mind-blowing theory comes from the renowned geologist Robert Schoch of Boston University, who states that the Yonaguni Monument is indeed most likely a natural formation, possibly used and modified by humans in the past, before seemingly sliding away to the murky depths of the ocean during a geological event that occurred in ancient history. On the flip side, the geologist that discovered the monument, Masaki Kimura, claimed that the structure was undoubtedly artificial, created by an ancient civilization at least 10,000 years ago, accurately carved and created before sliding into the ocean following unknown tectonic activity. Kimura also goes on to say that not only that, but he can also identify a nearby pyramid, castles, entire roads, other monuments, an entire stadium at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, this one is quite something. What do you guys think? Let me know. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, the creation of Baalbek. Because, holy moly, if this one isn't one of the most mysterious unsolved events in history, I'm not entirely sure what is. Who the hell built Baalbek in Lebanon, the most mysterious ruins of the entire Roman Empire, a monumental, supposedly 2,000-year-old temple to the god Jupiter that sits atop 3 separate 1,000-ton stone blocks? To put it into perspective, the monoliths at Stonehenge weigh about 1/40th of that. Yeah, you heard that correctly. 1,000-ton stone blocks. And despite being the diligent record keepers that they were, there is no record of who ordered this temple to be built, how these monolithic stones were cut, why they were cut, or how they even came to be, and how the temple itself came to be abandoned, because for the most part, whoever built Baalbek just up and left. Now, there are many mythological and cultural legends as to the origins of Baalbek. Some say that Cain built it to hide away from the wrath of God. Others say that giants built it at the command of Nimrod, which would eventually become the Tower of Babel. In fact, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, some claim that the intergalactic landing pad alluded to in its tale was in itself Baalbek, a site constructed purely for the reception of ancient astronauts. In fact, though, the actual mystery of Baalbek resides more within its geographical location. What was the point in cutting such enormous rocks out in the middle of nowhere? Why was this temple even built where it was? And why would the Romans go to such great lengths to create a structure that wasn't efficient in location instead of next to a major city or a port? The Romans weren't exactly known for doing things without efficiency and purpose. That's what made them so successful, after all. In fact, Baalbek seems so out of character to have been built by the Romans that many scholars completely eschew any historical engineering correlation with them and simply state that the Romans never built Baalbek but discovered it and then added their iconic pillars to Jupiter and repurposed the ruins as their own kind of temple. Yeah, I'm stumped, guys. The construction of Baalbek, who made it, when they did, how they did it, and why they did it remains to be one of the most mysterious events in history.
Number 5. Yang Liwei. In space, no one can hear you scream. They also can't hear you laugh, sing, or really just about do anything. It's markedly quiet up in space, which would make encountering a sound that you don't recognize while floating through the cosmos quite the stressful encounter, wouldn't you agree? In 2003, Yang Liwei became the first taikonaut to be sent into space by the CNSA, that's the Chinese National Space Administration, making headlines and history. Now, a few years ago, Liwei was giving an interview talking about his experiences, and he let slip a bizarre encounter that happened to him while he was out there in space. He said he recalled hearing the sound of someone knocking the hull of the spaceship as if someone was hammering at an iron bucket. He said, it didn't come from inside the spaceship, but it didn't come from outside either. That doesn't make me feel good. Naturally, Liwei was a little more than concerned at what he was experiencing, and he peered out into the porthole in hope of seeing something, maybe like We were low on fuel, and the spacecraft was just tumbling through space. Ed was asleep. We were taking turns sleeping in shifts. Anyway, Ed was asleep, and I was doing something in the craft. When I looked outside, I just glanced up, and there was something out there. It had a geometrical shape, similar to a beer can or a pop can, and with a little thing, like maybe a pencil or something sticking out of it. That size, dimensionally, it was all white. Now naturally people ran with this and published stories about McDivitt having seen a UFO and this being proof of an alien craft or a drone up in space. I mean, an astronaut saying outright, I think I saw a UFO up there, that's a pretty big deal. That's way more exciting than anything they were doing in the Gemini mission. McDivitt, however, changed his own tune about it and claims that when he returned home and he studied photographs from the craft, trying to understand what it was that he saw, he had a very boring revelation. McDivitt claims now that what he had seen was actually just a reflection of bolts from the hull in the window. The windows in the Gemini 4 craft were layered with 5 panes of glass, so that if one pane somehow cracked, there's still a good amount of pressure integrity. This thinking being that one of these panes did crack, and the sun shined on them just at the right angle, and the strange white object McDivitt saw was nothing more than a reflection being multiplied and reflected off multiple window panes. McDivitt clarified in the same interview saying, I'm quite sure that's what this thing was. Now, of course, it's also possible that he really did see a UFO and NASA got to him and pressed down on him just a little bit to get him to stop talking about it and publicly deny it. I mean, it's possible. I've definitely speculated way more wild, outrageous things than that on this channel.
Next up, at number 3, the Golan structure. Alright guys, if Catch the Bib had you scratching your head, then the Golan structure is going to require some form of head scratching machinery. Let me introduce you to the Golan structure, also known as Rajum el-Hiri, an ancient megalithic monument that resides in the Israeli-occupied portion of Golan Heights, just off of the east coast of the Sea of Galilee. Made up of more than 42,000 basalt rocks arranged in concentric circles with a mound that is 15 foot tall at its centre, the Golan structure has often been referred to as the Stonehenge of the Levant. Why? Well, of course, because it dates back to at least the early Bronze Age, to between 3000 and 2700 BCE. So what is it? Who built it? What purpose did it serve? Yeah, that'll be a we don't have a freaking clue on pretty much all of those points. The outermost wall of this structure is 520 feet in diameter and 8 feet high, and since archaeological excavations have thus far yielded very few material remains, most Israeli archaeologists believe that the site was certainly not of a defensive position or a residential quarter, but most likely, as the vast majority of these enigmas are, it was a ritual center. And not only that, but a ritual center that is possibly linked to the cult of the dead. But on that note, there's even more of a mystery, because so far no human remains have ever been found at the site, only objects pointing to its function as some kind of tomb. And also, hold on to your hats guys, because this is where it gets weirder. At the centre of the Golan structure, the actual entrance to a tomb was discovered, one that during the June and December solstices, its axis is perfectly aligned with. Yeah. More questions, fewer answers. The thing is though, as its namesake as the Stonehenge of the Levant, no other structures of its kind have ever been discovered, which is even more of a head scratcher considering the fact that in ancient Britain, as well as in South America, structures like this are pretty common. Some believe that its purpose was to worship Tammuz and Ishtar, the ancient Mesopotamian fertility gods. Others suggest that it was used by the Dakmas of the Zoroastrians to lay out their dead and let the birds remove the flesh from their bones. Some say that it was a calendar or a site to observe the constellations for religious calculations. Maybe it was all of these things at some point in time, but as it remains, we may never know. Coming in at number 2, the Great Lakes Copper Mystery. Oh boy, here we go. If you're not already feeling perplexed at the mysteries of the ancient world, then I'm fairly certain that this one will knock your metaphorical socks off. In the wilds of Michigan's Isle Royale National Park, it remains a beautiful and remote location, but thousands of years ago, the island was home to a thriving mining industry. Yes, mining. The rich veins of copper that ripple through the site's bedrock certainly drew the attention of the early Native Americans, and the fact that they diligently used this ore to make tools and jewelry is evident still. But the actual extent of their operation remains a complete and utter mystery. Why? Well, because around 6,500 years ago, there is clear and startling evidence to suggest that roughly 500,000 tons of copper was mined from the land. 500,000 tons of copper, which simply put is a staggering amount. Now, the copper culture complex is an astounding feat of ancient civilization regardless, but here is where our mystery takes another turn. You know why? Because Michigan copper is some of the purest copper on the planet. Keep that thought in mind. And 500,000 tons of it, well, frankly put, there should be more evidence to its use throughout the Midwest. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a leap here, and I'm going to point us toward another ancient mystery, one that occurred off the coast of Turkey, roughly around the 14th century BC. A shipwreck that was discovered just off the east shore of Uluburun, discovered by a sponge diver back in 1982. Now, the Uluburun shipwreck is a bit of a mystery in and of itself, but it's with the content of its cargo that we're concerned with here. Within the hull of the shipwreck, over 10 tons of copper oxide ingots were discovered. Now, oxide ingots, which are named so down to the fact that they are shaped with rectangular handholds on either side, were relatively common in the late Bronze Age period of the Mediterranean Sea. You know what is weird? Testing on these ingots later discovered that they were extraordinarily pure for others of its kind. In fact, more than 99.5% pure. The oxides themselves were brittle blister copper with voids and slag bits that only occur when multiple pourings were made outdoors over wood fires. There is only one type of ore of this purity, Michigan copper, the kind mined over 6,500 years ago in the copper culture complex of North America. Yeah, beats me, guys. And finally, coming in at number 1 spot, the Ness of Brodgar. And I absolutely adore this particular Neolithic mystery, and at the moment this is pretty much my direct inspiration for scholarly study of the ancient world. Now, we've covered this area quite a few times on this channel, and if you'd like to find out more about places like Skara Brae, the ancient site discovered on the Orkney Isles of northern Scotland, then please check out our Scottish history list, and also, you know, do your own discovering, because Neolithic Orkney is absolutely amazing. But there's another place that is even more remarkable than Skara Brae, the Ness of Brodgar, perhaps one of the most important discoveries in archaeological record depicting just what the hell was going on during the Neolithic period of ancient Britain. Now, back in 2003, in a site that occupies the central position with the Orkney archipelago that lies between the locks of Stenness and Harray, an imposing complex of monuments were discovered, a series of structures that seemingly were of pivotal importance to Neolithic Orcadians, and perhaps even further afield, perhaps even the whole of ancient Britain. The site itself, which lies between the already discovered ring of Brodgar, a Neolithic stone circle that has its own mysteries, as well as the equally mysterious stones of Stenness, dates back to at least 3,300 BC. As of 2016, 14 structures have been discovered, with many of them being built on top of each other, suggesting perhaps an even older use of this site and a location of incredible importance to the Neolithic people of ancient Britain. Without a doubt though, the most impressive structure, known as Structure 10, which appears to be a Neolithic pyramid, is even more of a head scratcher. Yeah, I just said Neolithic pyramid. Around this site, which was used prolifically up until around 2200 BCE, after which it abruptly stopped, archaeologists have since discovered the bones of approximately 400 cattle, around which the carcasses of several red deer were placed, with many of their tibia bones being cracked and extracted for marrow, suggesting the site of a feast. Do you know what's weirder though? During this event, there is also evidence of the temple being largely destroyed, brick by brick. Seemingly, for some reason, the Neolithic Orcadians built this site as a place of incredible importance, used it for 1,000 years, and then one day threw a party and tore the whole thing down. I have no idea, guys, but most importantly, I want to know.
Coming in at number 5, we have the narwhal tusk. If any of you have ever seen the movie Elf, then you're familiar with the cute narwhal in the beginning of the movie, and that movie really brought narwhals to the public's attention and making this sea creature more popular than ever before. But so much about this creature is a mystery. In 1577, the English explorer Martin Frobisher led an expedition of 150 men to the northern Canada in search of gold, but they had come across something they had never intended, and that was the sea unicorn. The myth of the unicorn goes back centuries, and the business of unicorn horn trade was sustained through the Middle Ages and Renaissance by Vikings who killed the so-called sea unicorns, cut off their horns and sold them for an astronomical price. As European naturalists became more familiar with the world's animal, the myth of the unicorn faded, but mystery of the sea unicorn continued. Frobisher's discovery was actually what we know today as the narwhal, but the horn itself continues to be speculated by many. But the horn is apparently not a horn at all, but is a tooth. The relatives of narwhals includes species like the beluga whales, orcas and dolphins, but the mystery remains of how did this massive freakish tooth evolve in this one specific species after its ancestors branched off from whales with ordinary teeth. Many scientists and researchers debate about what this tooth is used for, and some suggest it's an acoustic probe, a rudder, an ice picker, or a spear for battling predators. These creatures don't make it easy for researchers to see them use their tusk for anything at all, so it makes many people continue to question it. Many have come up with many different theories about this so-called horn and what they use it for and why they have it. It has created a huge debate between researchers and scientists to this day, but no definite answer has come out to this day. In at number 4 we have the submarine disappearances in 1968. This is one giant mysterious situation, which is the disappearance of 4 submarines from 4 different countries in 1968. The USS Scorpion, a Soviet submarine K-129, a French submarine Minerve, and the INS Dakar went inexplicably missing over just a 5-month period, and the last 2 disappearing only 4 days apart. The exact causes of these sinkings remain unknown and remain a mystery over 50 years later. The INS Dakar was scheduled to arrive in Israel on January 29, 1968. When it didn't return, searchers went out to find it, but after a while there was no sign of the missing submarine. So the search ended on February 4th, and the 69-man crew was officially declared dead in 1981. The cause of the sinking was never determined, and theories say that either a mechanical or human error caused a catastrophic accident, or that the submarine snorkel was damaged after hitting another ship, causing it to flood. The Minerve was on the training operation in the Mediterranean on January 27, 1968, and when they were on their way home, the men were caught in a bad storm. When it was 30 miles away from the port, the Minerve made contact with the men on land and said it would port in about an hour, but an hour came and went, and the submarine had never returned. A frantic search was conducted with 20 vessels and aircrafts trying to locate the Minerve, but it was eventually called off on February 2nd when they found nothing. The K-129 with a crew of 98 descended on March 8, 1968, and almost 2 weeks into patrol on the North Pacific, the K-129 failed to send a scheduled radio message. The Soviets soon began a frantic search, and after 2 months of no sign of the submarine, they gave up their search. The cause of the ship sinking remains unknown and will likely never be known. Almost 3 months after the K-129, the USS Scorpion, a nuclear-powered attack submarine with a crew of 99 men, went missing in the Atlantic while on its way back from a patrol in the Mediterranean. It was sent out on February 15, 1968, and toward the end of its patrol, it radioed that it was expected to return on May 27th. But as you can guess, the USS Scorpion would never return. Like the others, many searched for the lost ship, but on June 5th, the Scorpion and its crew were declared presumed lost. Over the years, there have been multiple searches for these submarines, but only parts have been recovered, and it's considered one of the biggest mysteries that happened in the sea. No one knows why so many went missing in such a short amount of time, how exactly they went missing for so long, and what exactly made these vessels disappear. And this is a mystery we may never get the answer to.
Coming up next at number 3, St. John's Dance. And you may have heard mention of this one before, but perhaps not in this context. You see, it's important that we note that in modern times, St. John's Dance or St. Vitus's Dance is a terrible disease also known as Sydenham's chorea that affects the nervous system and results in a series of hysterical jerking movements of the limbs, often exhibited in young children. Generally speaking, it isn't infectious, but that doesn't figure to explain the countless records of mass hysterical dancing that occurred throughout history, of literally thousands of people across Europe being afflicted by a manic need to dance. The earliest known outbreak occurred in the 7th century and was primarily thought to occur during times of intense hardship, particularly affecting the peasant and working classes. So what? You're a peasant in Dark Age Europe and all of a sudden you just start dancing and can't stop, somehow infecting the rest of your village, town or city, until there's a horde of people doing the exact same thing, potentially collapsing from exhaustion or dying from a heart attack. Well, yeah, because that's exactly what happened. One of the most well-documented cases was in 1518 in the Austrian city of Strasbourg, where a woman named Frau Troffia began dancing in the streets, and within a month, 400 people had joined her. Yeah, she danced for a month, and loads of people died. Now, there are many theories on the true explanation of St. John's Dance, and scholars still argue as to whether it truly was a real contagious disease or merely a social phenomenon. One of those theories suggests a particular fungi had infected their crops, and another suggests that it was all a misunderstanding and St. John's Dance was actually the practice of some secretive European cult. Yeah. Beats me, guys. Swinging in at number 2, the remains of Richard III. And this one, strangely enough, is the perfect blend of ancient mystery and potentially contemporary unexplainable intrigue. Because that's exactly what you all came for, right? Also, I mean, this one is already pretty much solved, but it's in the details where its mystery truly shines. We all know Richard III, right? A horse, my kingdom for a horse. But well, apparently this woman, Scottish author and historian Philippa Langley, knew him a little bit better than anyone else did. Now, it's important to note that history had long forgotten the final resting place of Richard III, the last Plantagenet king of England, and after his defeat at the Battle of Bosworth, his remains were scattered to the winds of history. After all, history is written by the winners. Well, let's fast forward to modern times when in September 2012, Philippa Langley led an excavation of a car park in Leicester city centre. A few signs pointed toward it potentially being the ruined remains of Greyfriars Church, but in the words of Langley, she had a strange feeling, one that she couldn't quite place, and something was telling her that Richard III was buried beneath that very car park. Now, the dig team was on a very tight budget and only had one chance at excavating a tiny portion of the car park. And guess what? The exact place that Philippa Langley had a strange feeling about turned out to be the final resting place of Richard III's remains. And not only that, but the parking space that he was buried beneath was marked with a large painted R on the tarmac, used to signify a reserved parking space. I mean, all of this can be explained away, right? Eventually someone would have found the remains of the dead king, but you can't deny the fact that the strange cosmic coincidence that led Langley to his final resting place is much more mysterious than a dead English king in a car park. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, the Tunguska event. And I absolutely love this entry for its cosmic significance alone and the potential warning sign that we should all be very wary of. Let's head on over to remote Siberia, where on the bright summer morning of the 30th of June 1908, a massive impact explosion, the likes of which has never before been seen in human history, completely flattened a remote area of the Siberian wilderness, covering over 2,000 square kilometers of isolated forest. As far as we know, no one was caught in the blast, but if they were, they would have certainly been obliterated by a shockwave 1,000 times greater than that of the Hiroshima atomic bomb. The Tunguska explosion completely flattened over 80 million trees in its blast radius, rupturing their roots like grass to a lawnmower. 50 or so miles away, those native to the region were knocked flat on their feet by the blast, windows shattered and buildings subsided. For all intents and purposes, it was the result of an unimaginable power. And if Tunguska had occurred over a metropolitan area, an entire city would have likely been flattened. So, what was it? Well, the leading scientific consensus is that the explosion of the Tunguska event was caused by the impact of a small asteroid, one that had possibly burned up in Earth's atmosphere and then produced a shockwave that resulted in the aforementioned cataclysm. However, not everyone buys that hypothesis, and many other researchers and scientists have proposed the Tunguska event being the result of a leak of natural gas from deep within the Earth's crust that became ignited by a storm and resulted in the Tunguska hellfire. Most evidence, though, points towards Tunguska being the result of an asteroid, albeit one that luckily somehow missed the vast majority of our entire populated planet. It's also important to note that researchers believe Tunguska to be the result of a small asteroid, which is a terrifying thought in itself. It poses an incredibly important question: how would our history have been shaped if the Tunguska event occurred somewhere else? What if its intended target had changed? And more importantly, are we prepared if it ever happens again?
Number 5 on this list is the Fermi paradox. This one is all about aliens, but maybe not how you might expect. Science Focus says, in 1950, Enrico Fermi, the man who built the first nuclear reactor, was having lunch in the canteen of the Los Alamos bomb lab in New Mexico when he suddenly said, "Where is everybody?" Everyone around the table knew exactly what he meant. Decades later, Fermi's question was examined independently by the American physicists Michael Hart and Frank Tipler. Hart considered aliens spreading throughout our Milky Way, and Tipler considered self-replicating machines that, on arrival at a planetary system, exploit the resources to build 2 copies of themselves that continue voyaging. Both concluded that even at modest speeds of travel, every star in the galaxy would be visited in a fraction of the age of the Milky Way. As Fermi realized, the aliens should be here on Earth. They do not appear to be, though. This became the Fermi paradox. Hundreds of explanations have been proposed.
They include the ideas that we are the first intelligence to arise in the galaxy and so are totally alone, and that we are a nursery world off limits to advanced civilizations that might adversely affect our development. A more mundane possibility is that there is no paradox because any signs of visitation in the distant past would be erased by wind, rain, and geological processes. Recently, however, a team led by Dr. Jonathan Carroll Nellenbach of the University of Rochester, New York, has proposed that our sun may simply have been bypassed by a wave of extraterrestrial expansion. So why are aliens not here? Have they already been here and we didn't even know? Or did they just bypass our solar system altogether? Or is all of this nonsense and the universe is just so big that they haven't gotten to us yet? It's certainly something interesting to think about. Considering the universe is infinite and there are so many places and planets we don't know about, it seems ridiculous to think that we're the only intelligent life or the first intelligent life in everything. Like, that's as if we hit the biggest lottery ever. Comment down below what you think about this alien question and why aren't they here yet? Number 4 on this list is dark matter. You've definitely heard the term dark matter get thrown around a bunch before, and you've probably wondered, what the heck is it? Well, if that sounds like you, then you aren't alone. Scientists all across the globe are still wondering what dark matter is and the purpose that it serves. Science Focus says dark matter gives out no light or too little light for us to detect. We know it exists because we see the effect of its gravity on the visible stars and galaxies. For instance, the Milky Way could not have dragged in enough matter to make its stars in the 13.82 billion years since the Big Bang without there being a lot of invisible matter whose extra gravity speeded things up. The European Space Agency's Planck satellite found that dark matter accounts for 26.8% of the mass energy of the universe compared with the 4.3% of normal atomic energy. It therefore outweighs the visible stars and galaxies by a factor of 6. Puzzlingly, no Earth-based experiment has found any evidence of dark matter despite decades of searching. It is conceivable that it's not our theory of matter that needs modification, but our theory of gravity. Or that dark matter is not a fluid made of a single particle, but is complex like the atomic matter we see around us. Maybe the universe is filled with dark stars and dark planets and dark life. There is an entire universe of dark matter that we don't even know about. Like, what the heck is this stuff and what's it composed of? Why can't our eyes see it? Why doesn't something this dense even show up? It's all very confusing and nobody can figure it out right now. Dark matter is one of the biggest mysteries in the universe, and understanding what it is and how it works could completely change our understanding of gravity and matter as a whole. Hopefully NASA can get a grasp on it soon and the mystery can finally be solved.
In at 3, Kenny Veach. On November 10, 2014, a hiker by the name of Kenny Veach disappeared overnight in the mountains of Nevada, and since then, his disappearance has remained a complete mystery to the public and even those that knew him. Prior to his disappearance, Veach commented on a YouTube video, claiming to have found a cave in the area of Nellis Air Force Base. He wrote, "I am a long-distance hiker. One time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base, I found a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find, but as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. The closer I got to the cave entrance, the worse the vibrating became. Suddenly I became very scared and hightailed it out there. That was one of the strangest things that ever happened to me." Veach had stated that he would return to the cave, bringing with him a camera and a weapon, and that he did. He posted a video on YouTube showing the hiker looking inside. However, for those hoping to hunt it down themselves, it is almost near impossible considering the vastness of the desert. The events following the video are a complete mystery. All we know is that Veach returned 6 months later, but he was never seen or heard from again. We can only speculate. Was there something more supernatural occurring within the cave, causing the unexplained vibrations? Did he get lost upon his return? But considering his hiking experience, it is doubtful. Did he commit suicide? All we know is that a search party was conducted and his cell phone found near an abandoned mine shaft, yet no body, clothes, or other belongings were ever located. In it to Eilean Mor lighthouse keepers. Eilean Mor is a remote island located within the Flannan Islands. It is completely uninhabited, aside from one lighthouse that once housed a group of keepers whose unexplained disappearances left the world stunned. The island has always sparked interest in people due to the supernatural superstition surrounding it. The islands were named after Saint Flannan, a 6th century Irish bishop who built a small chapel on the island in hopes to deter the spirits he believed haunt the isolated spot. Now on the 26th of December 1900, a small vessel was making its way towards the Flannan Islands. Its destination, Eilean Mor. The vessel was carrying Captain James Harvey and a replacement lighthouse keeper, Joseph Moore. As the vessel drew closer to the island, the pair were surprised to find that no one was there to greet them. They even sent up a warning flare to attract their attention. However, there was no response. As they made their way up to the lighthouse, they immediately noticed something was awry. The door was unlocked, coats missing, and chairs were overturned, as though someone had left in quite the hurry. The island was searched, but no one was ever found, except for a lighthouse log belonging to Thomas Marshall. The last entry was on December 12th. He wrote of severe winds like a which had never been seen in 20 years. He also noted that one of the keepers had been very quiet and the other crying. What makes this log entry particularly peculiar is that there were never any reports of a storm hitting the island. In fact, the weather was calm. Eventually more clues were found. Ropes hewn over rocks which held a brown crate. Perhaps the keepers were attempting to retrieve supplies before a wave washed them all out to sea. I guess we'll never know. And finally, in at number 1, Elisa Lam. Arguably the most infamous unsolved mystery floating around on YouTube, many internet dwellers have attempted to solve this unexplainable death of a young Canadian girl at the Cecil Hotel, but none have been able to crack it, and I doubt they ever will. On February 19, 2013, the body of Elisa Lam was discovered atop the infamous hotel in downtown Los Angeles, floating in the building's water tank, completely naked. Prior to the grisly discovery, Lam had been reported missing at the beginning of the month, and her body was only located after tenants had reported issues with the water supply in the hotel. The root cause? Lam's deceased body floating within it. The discovery was truly horrifying, and the way in which her body was found has left more questions than answers. However, it's not the most disturbing thing that emerged out of this bizarre case. A CCTV video began to float around YouTube of Lam's final moments, which featured her in a frenzied state inside of the hotel elevator. In the disturbing video, Lam can be seen hitting a number of different buttons on the elevator panel, yet the door was never closed. Whether down to a malfunction or something more sinister, Lam's behavior is what sparks the most intrigue. She stands in the corner, almost hiding out of sight from whoever or whatever is on the other side of the doors. She then steps out before quickly stepping back in again, and then eventually leaves the elevator entirely. Now, many theorists on the internet have noted that a shadow that does not belong to Lam can be seen outside of the elevator doors. Personally, I haven't spotted anything, but that doesn't mean that she was completely alone. Now, back to the discovery of her body. Once retrieved from the water tank, it appeared to have decomposed and was bloated, showing hints of green and even marbling on the abdomen. However, there were no signs of foul play or suicide, which left medical professionals completely baffled. I don't think we'll ever know what truly happened to Elisa Lam, but what do you guys think?
Kicking off at number 5, the tomb of Antony and Cleopatra. Now, the legendary Roman politician and general Marcus Antonius, alongside his kindred spirit Cleopatra, may well be the most notorious lovers in the history of our civilization, and although mountains upon mountains of literature have been written about their star-crossed fate, the real mystery of Antony and Cleopatra came after they had both slipped from this mortal coil. Now, if you know anything about the Roman conquest of Egypt, you'll know that around 30 BC, Mark Antony and Cleopatra were not in the Romans' best books, and a general known as Octavian had waged a long and bloody campaign to bring Cleopatra's reign to an end, which he ultimately won, but sadly for us, that's where the trail runs cold, with no leads as to the two lovers' final resting place. One of the greatest unsolved mysteries in antiquity is the exact location of the final burial place of Antony and Cleopatra, but according to several ancient historians, Tonius and Plutarch to name a few, it was recorded that Octavian had permitted the two to be buried together, as their surviving children were taken back to Rome to be raised as Roman citizens. There are several leads that their tomb was located somewhere west of Alexandria, but numerous excavations throughout history have proven fruitless. However, they did come close, and between 2008 and 2009, reports of the prestigious Egyptologist Zahi Hawass having found evidence of their fated tomb came to light. Although no concrete evidence has been unearthed, relics and memorial coins of the lovers have been found in small ceremonial tombs, perhaps pointing toward Cleopatra's and Antony's tomb being somewhere in the vicinity. The excavation continues, but whoever stumbles upon the tomb of Antony and Cleopatra will unearth one of history's greatest mysteries. Next up at number 4, the sack of Baltimore. And now I love this particular entry, partly for its many layers and potential implications, but mainly for the fact that it's a swashbuckling tale of chaos and carnage that seemingly came out of nowhere. On June 20th, 1631, a small village named Baltimore in West Cork of Ireland was randomly and viciously attacked by pirates. Not just any pirates though, but pirates from the Barbary coast of North Africa, which at the time was synonymous with the Ottoman Empire. Now, if you couldn't tell, that's quite a distance. This incident would go down as the largest attack by Barbary pirates in both Ireland and Great Britain, and seemingly the target was a tiny village tucked in the corner of the Emerald Isle. So it posed the glaring question, why? Was it just a random chance of opportunity after the pirates had drifted off course? Perhaps, but it's not likely. See, the attack was led by a Dutch captain by the name of Jan Jansvoon van Haarlem, who had changed his name to Murad Rees the Younger, which, if you can't tell, is a bit of a curveball. But that curveball may have actually been thrown by someone else entirely. You see, despite being a small village, Baltimore was actually in the middle of a power play. At the time, it was under the control of a Gaelic chieftain, Sir Finian O'Driscoll, but the nearby English colony of Cork, led by a man named Sir Walter Coppinger, also had Baltimore in his sights. History is unclear as to who pulled which string, but all signs point toward the bizarre pirate attack being orchestrated by someone else entirely, in the hopes of seizing power away from O'Driscoll. In fact, several texts have even suggested that O'Driscoll's own relatives may have orchestrated the move, as they'd been exiled to Spain following defeat at the Battle of Kinsale. Whoever did it overestimated the bloodthirst of the Barbary pirates though, because following the raid, Baltimore was virtually deserted for several generations. The best laid plans of mice and men, yeah, you know what they say.
Coming in at number 3, we have the Bermuda Triangle. Named for the triangular shape of around 500,000 square miles of ocean between Miami, Bermuda and Puerto Rico. For centuries, the Bermuda Triangle has been mystified as a harrowing patch of ocean where sailors and pilots are prone to lose contact with the natural world and disappear forever. Back when Christopher Columbus first sailed the area, he claimed to see a giant ball of light in the sky that crashed into the horizon and made it glow. Soon after, all sorts of strange events happened in the area, including several boats mysteriously disappearing, and in one incident in 1945, an entire squadron of US torpedo bombers vanished into thin air due to all these weird instances, giving this place the name the Devil's Triangle. The exact number of ships and airplanes that have disappeared is not known, but it's estimated that around 50 ships and 20 planes have been victim to the Bermuda Triangle, and many of these mysterious disappearances of these ships and planes have never been recovered. Many see the Bermuda Triangle as a real phenomenon and have multiple theories to try and explain this mysterious place, and some of these theories are human error, paranormal explanations, violent weather like hurricanes, the Gulf Stream, which is a major surface current within the ocean, methane hydrates, which is a form of natural gas that causes bubbles to form around the ship and ultimately sink it without warning. All of these are only theories, and the Bermuda Triangle to this day is the most notorious sea legend of all time. In at number 2, we have the Gulf of Mexico's cursed shipwreck. An estimated 4,000 shipwrecks litter the seabed across the stretch of water, and the Gulf of Mexico is one of the wealthiest locations for maritime archaeology in the world. In February 2001, oil workers for ExxonMobil were laying some pipeline when they happened to stumble upon a shipwreck about 2,600 feet deep. After discovering the wreckage, a team was assembled to explore this mysterious ship, but nothing seemed to go right. The exploration submarine malfunctioned right as it was getting ready to go down to check out the wreck, and that was only the beginning of these mysterious malfunctions. Others include video monitors going out whenever they fired their thrusters, sonars breaking, and hydraulics going haywire with no explanation for any of these problems. After nothing working and things continuing to break, the Navy sent a researcher submarine down to investigate the wreckage, and on the way down it suddenly self-destructed, and somehow when it finally did get to the wreck, its arms were too short to reach anything. 6 months later, in July in 2002, a team working aboard the NR-1 decided to launch a robotic sub down to the wreck site, but the malfunctions continued. The second the rover entered the water, it veered to the right and went out of control. The tether had caught in the propellers, which caused the vessel to smash into the underside of the ship, and the rover was never recovered. Later in the summer of 2002, the curse would continue as a ship from Sustainable Sea Program of the NOAA offered to pick up artifacts from the site. The first time the vessel attempted to leave the dock, debris was lodged in the propeller. The second time, the propeller locked and the ship ended up in dry lock, needing repairs. Over the years, many others have tried to learn more about this wreck, but little was found, and what was found wasn't at all helpful. To this day, nothing has been able to get too close to the shipwreck to investigate and explore the phenomenon, and very little is known about this mysterious ship. Many believe the lives lost in the wreck continue to haunt the ship and will keep anyone and everything out of it at all costs. And finally, in at number 1, we have the unmapped ocean floor. This is truly one of the biggest mysteries, and humans' curiosity about the Earth's floor is centuries old. Much remains to be learned about the ocean, especially exploring the mystery of the deep sea. From mapping and describing the physical, biological, geological, chemical and archaeological aspects of the ocean and understanding their dynamics. For centuries, scholars believed the deep sea to be a lifeless place. Until the late 19th century, we've discovered there is a diversity of life and creatures living down there. Many researchers and divers had tried to dive and take submarines down to explore more of this unknown place, but it's very hard due to the extremely cold temperatures, the darkness, and the literally bone-shattering pressure that's more than 1,000 times that at sea level. In 2019, a retired naval officer, Victor Vescovo, set a new record as one of the deepest dives to date, reaching almost 36,000 feet down in a submarine into the deepest place on Earth, the Marianas Trench. The ocean covers more than 70% of the planet's surface, driving weather, regulating temperature, and ultimately supporting all life's organisms. Throughout history, the ocean has been a vital source of sustenance, transport, commerce, growth, and inspiration. But to this day, more than 80% of the ocean remains unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored, and it's still unknown how deep the ocean really is. Given the high degree of difficulty and cost in exploring our ocean using underwater vehicles, researchers have relied heavily on technologies such as sonar to generate maps of the seafloor, but currently less than 10% of the global ocean is mapped using modern sonar technology, and only about 35% of the United States have been mapped using modern methods. As we go deeper into the ocean floor, it's too deep for this modern technology because it's too remote and dark for this type of visual mapping. So if you go swimming in the ocean, it's very unknown of what is swimming and living below you. But scientists and researchers continue to develop technologies to unlock the many secrets of the ocean. The NOAA is working to increase our understanding of the ocean realm. In at 5, the Chase Family Vault. The first account of the Chase Family Vault incident was published in 1883 in James Edwards Alexander's Transatlantic Sketches. According to the writer, Mrs. Goddard was buried in the vault in 1807, followed by Anne Marie Chase in 1808 and later Dorcas Chase in 1812. However, following the death of Thomas Chase, the vault was once again opened. But what was discovered baffled everyone. The caskets of the Chase girls were said to have been disturbed, having been tossed from the place, left in a very confused state. A similar incident was found to have occurred upon opening the vault for 2 burials in 1816 and 1819. It had been stated, I quote, "Each time that the vault was opened, the coffins were replaced in their proper situations, that is, 3 on the ground side by side and the others laid on them. The vault was regularly closed. The door, a massive stone which required 6 or 7 men to move, was cemented by masons, and though the floor was sand, there were no marks of footsteps or water. The last time the vault was opened was in 1819. Lord Combermere was then present, and the coffins were found confusedly thrown about the vault, some with their heads down and others up. What could have occasioned this phenomenon? In no other vault in the island has this ever occurred. Was it an earthquake which occasioned it, or the effects of an inundation in the vault?" End quote. What are your theories? Were the spirits of the Chase family not yet at peace, lingering within the sealed off vault, desperately seeking to escape? Or was something less sinister at play? An earthquake? A very strong jokester? No one will ever know. In at 4, Jeffrey Daniels. On November 10th, 1997, a man in his late 30s checked into a Super 8 motel in Aiken, South Carolina. He paid in cash but left no name, stating to the staff that he wanted to leave all that behind. That night he ordered food, but when it arrived he did not answer the door, and a do not disturb sign was seen hanging on his door with a handwritten note that read, "I am not responsible for the consequences." 3 days later his body was found. He had committed suicide. However, his method of death had never been released released to the public, which has posed many questions. No identification was discovered at the scene, only 2 bottles of antidepressants. However, the labels were removed. Upon investigation, it was discovered that the mystery man had stayed at a number of local hospitals following a handful of failed suicide attempts. The only name he gave? Jeffrey Daniels. He supplied a social security number and a New York address, however both were fake. The mystery man's true identity was never discovered, or why he so desperately sought to remove his existence and leave behind all evidence of his life.
Number 3 on this list is the central black hole. At the center of almost every single known galaxy in the universe, which there are about 2 trillion of, there is a huge black hole just chilling in the middle. These aren't your everyday typical black holes though, they are gargantuan in size and weight. Some of these beasts weigh around 50 billion times that of our sun. Just an absolutely insane number that our brains truly can't really comprehend. But how did this absolute unit of a black hole get there, and why is it so big? Well, NASA doesn't really know, and they are desperately trying to find out. Black holes are one of the most interesting things in our universe, and one of the things that we know very little about. The question of where does a black hole actually go to will probably never be answered, because we'll never be able to go inside without getting completely crushed into oblivion. But figuring out why they're in the middle of pretty much every notable galaxy is important. If we can understand this, then we can understand how a galaxy is formed and potentially the lifespan of certain galaxies. Also, knowing what creates these black holes will help us better understand them and see if our planet will ever be at risk of such a disaster. Granted, maybe ignorance is bliss in this case, because even if we knew a black hole was coming, there's really nothing that we'd be able to do about it. Number 2 on this list is dark energy. For a long time, the only force that was thought to be operating on the entire universe was gravity. This was everywhere in the universe and decided pretty much how things played out. Gravity is not alone anymore though, or at least since the discovery of dark energy. Dark energy is this invisible force that is everywhere in the universe and is partially responsible for speeding up the expansion of said universe. Apparently this energy overtook gravity 5 billion years ago as the dominant force that's expanding the universe, and that's why it's happening in the first place. The thing is, we have no idea what this dark energy is or why it's here. Similar to dark matter, it feels like this has just appeared, and because we can't see it or have no idea of its origin, we have no idea how much weight it really has on us and our current laws of physics. Apparently 2/3 of the energy mass of the universe is made up of this stuff, and we have no idea about it. That's kind of scary if you think about it, and it puts in perspective how little we know about things. Oftentimes, I think we fall into a trap assuming that our species is far more advanced than it actually is, but when you consider that we have no idea where 2/3 of the energy mass in our universe came from, or what it is, it really brings you back to reality. I feel like this might be one of the hardest mysteries on this list to solve, and it's gonna take a while. And number 1 on this list is the multiverse. What seems to be the staple of a plotline of any good sci-fi movie these days is the multiverse, something that we truly know nothing about. The theory is basically that there is an infinite number of universes with an infinite number of possibilities and outcomes, and it's all just freaking infinite and honestly kind of hurts my brain to think about for very long. But is there any substance to this theory? How will we be able to know if it's true or not, and what would that mean for us? So the multiverse theory all comes from another theory called inflation theory. Inflation theory is the thinking that in basically a second, when our universe was just a baby, everything started inflating and growing super fast, expanding outwards in all directions. Now it's thought that the inflation of our universe stopped 14 billion years ago, but that when our universe stopped, the beginning of another started, and so on and so forth. It's very complicated, and in all honesty, I don't really understand all of it, but that's the bare bones. There's also the thinking that because life is so hard to support, as in you need so many things to go right in the universe, it seems extremely unlikely that if there is only one universe, life would have actually formed. If there were multiple or infinite universes, there would be enough chances though that one or more are bound to have the necessary things to create life. Either way, if this is true, then it obviously changes a lot of things about how we view our universe and the role we play in it. Maybe there's another version of you just chilling in a totally alternate universe right now, except instead of hands, you have wings or something. A little ridiculous, I know, but if universes are infinite, then you never know.
Number 5. The Dark Watchers. California is oft considered one of the most beautiful states. It's got gorgeous mountains, lush beaches, sunny days. It's practically a paradise. But behind sun-streaked sands at the peaks of the Santa Lucia Mountains lies a dark secret. A mysterious group of shadowy beings watching over the people below. The locals call them Los Vigilantes Oscuros. Los Vigilantes Oscuros, or the Dark Watchers, were first reported during the 18th century by Spanish settlers who arrived there. The stories would describe these tall, featureless specters that would appear for a moment, serving as a warning before someone's imminent disappearance. It was the last thing you'd ever see. Now, these creatures towered over mortals and looked human enough, but were anything but. They stood 10 to 12 feet tall and were said to be draped in cloaks or capes and wore large brimmed hats like that of a witch. Folklore and oral stories describe these creatures as sternly observing, watching over on high, and seemingly only pursuing those who disturb them. But it is said that those who approach these figures vanish into oblivion, never seen again, not even leaving behind a footprint. So what are they? With hundreds of years worth of reports and sightings, surely someone must have some guess as to what scary shadow people are watching you in the mountains. Now, the prevailing and admittedly kind of dull theory is that the Dark Watchers are a symptom of pareidolia, a very common psychological phenomenon in which the human brain attempts to seek out patterns that it recognizes in something weird. It's why our brain often fills in strange details in the sky. If we see something up there, we can see a flying saucer kind of because we want it to be a flying saucer, you know? Our brain fills in the details we think we see. Encounters of Dark Watchers could just be the shadows of swaying trees or creatures darting about in the night and tired eyes mistaking it for something else. But this video is about unsolved paranormal mysteries, and it's more likely this might be a paranormal phenomenon for which there is no comfortable scientific or reasonable explanation. These creatures through the veil exist in a way I just can't understand. So perhaps it's best for now that we follow their example, and you know what? We just watch. We just observe, we take nothing but photos, we leave footprints, I think that's how it goes. And we keep watching Top 5 Scary. The shadow people told me to say that. It's actually crazy. The shadow people also told me that their one wish is they want for you guys out there to like and comment and subscribe and hit that little bell to make sure you get all the videos that we put out. It's weird that they were so specific with their orders, but that's I'm just relaying what they told us. So keep on watching Top 5 Scary, but do all that subscribing business at the end of this video, because otherwise you're gonna miss the rest of the California mysteries I got for you. Number 4. The Ghost of Hollywood. The Hollywood sign is probably one of the most iconic landmarks on the West Coast. Instantly you see that and you know you're in La La Land. But did you know it might be haunted by the spirit of a Hollywood starlet who took her life years ago? Beneath the monument to Tinseltown's glitz and glamour lies a dark secret that perhaps would be better left buried. Peg Entwistle was a young actress and a Hollywood hopeful who had a dream, like many before her, to come to Hollywood and become a household name, making it big on the silver screen. She had a small career on Broadway and then traveled to California to make it in the pictures and landed a role in a picture 13 Women. Now, by the time the film had premiered to test audiences, her role was cut almost entirely down to 12 women, causing her to fall into a depression. The film released and was neither a commercial or critical hit. Despondent, Entwistle thought there was no hope for her. On September 16th, 1932, she left her home to climb the Hollywood sign and cast herself off of the H to the hiking trail below. Now, since then, hikers and visitors to Hollywood's famous landmark have reported strange occurrences around the tourist spot. Hikers claim they can smell strange perfume in the air, thought to be Peggy's favorite. Joggers sometimes claim they see an ethereal woman in 1930s with a sad expression walking down the trail. That could also just be Lana Del Rey though. One park ranger, John Arbogast, claims he sees her almost nightly whenever it's too foggy. Sees her sitting, brooding, forever trapped in the place she could never make her dreams happen. This does give me an idea though, maybe a little way to solve everybody's problems. Maybe somebody makes a movie about the ghost and the Hollywood sign, and then instead of blowing your budget on special effects, you ask her to play the ghost. She gets to star in a big movie. You get to make a movie about ghosts. She might pass on. Everybody wins. Win, 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 win. Just make sure if you make that movie, I produce that, okay? So keep me in the credits.
At number 3, A858. This made its way way onto the internet in 2011, and it's one of Reddit's most puzzling subreddits. So basically this page is dedicated to long and confusing codes that are written in a hexadecimal. This numerical notation system is used in computer programs. So many people have tried to solve these codes, even teaming up with others to try and figure them out. The A858 used to post daily, and very few of their posts have actually been deciphered. But when someone does manage to crack the code, it's usually a random phrase or something else pretty trivial that's being revealed. The meanings of these codes and their purposes in the first place is still a mystery to this day. Maybe the answer lies in one of the uncrackable codes. Coming in at number 2, the Plague Doctor video. So yeah, this video is very strange and altogether creepy. It first appeared online in May of 2015. Basically the video is of this person in a plague doctor's mask, and they are doing some strange movements in an abandoned building. There's some Morse code going on, an odd static tone, and some jump cuts of other videos spliced in. The whole point of this video is unclear, but it's creepy nonetheless. This video is titled 011011010110101, etc. Yeah, it goes on for a while. This binary code translates to Muert, which in Spanish means death. Of course there's a thread devoted to figuring out exactly what's going on in this video, and they revealed that the video apparently contains the coordinates to the White House, some chess moves, disturbing images depicting violence against women, and other random threatening messages. The source of this video is unknown, as the posters claim no connection to the video and maintain that they did not create the video. So yeah, no one knows the point of this video, but nonetheless it's pretty creepy. Alright, and before we jump into our number 1 spot, I just want to remind you guys to please show us some love by giving this video a big thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. And once again, stay tuned until the end of the video as I will be answering your questions. And if you would like to be featured in an upcoming video, then make sure you leave those questions below. And in at number 1, Anonymous. Yes, this is definitely one that needed to be on this list. We've all heard about this group, but if for some reason you are unfamiliar with them, Anonymous was founded in 2003, and it's a group made up of self-proclaimed hacktivists who have basically become a household name over the past several years. This group's goal is to go online and attack governments, government institutions, government agencies, corporations, and the Church of Scientology. The people of this group say that they have a greater good purpose behind their attacks. Most of their attacks took place in 2011 and 2015. They will usually flood websites, forcing them to shut down. The group is also skilled when it comes to finding something their target is sensitive about and using that to their advantage. They recently declared war on ISIS, they flooded its associated websites with porn, and shut down many pages for good. What's even crazier is the anonymous members have been able to keep their identities a secret even after all of these years. The police and government have tried to find out who the members of this group are since they first came out, and still 15 years later they have no idea.
In at 5, Jackie Sutton. In October 2015, British journalist Jackie Sutton arrived at a Turkish airport, catching a connecting flight to Iraq where she had been working with an organisation known as IWPR. However, Jackie never caught her connecting flight. Hours after she was spotted on CCTV footage, Jackie was found dead in an airport bathroom. It was determined to be suicide by hanging. Even weirder, it was hanging by shoelace. Now, Turkish reports made this tragedy even more confusing, stating that Jackie had become very upset after she missed a connecting flight and couldn't afford to pay for a new one. However, reports stated differently. Jackie had in fact purchased a new ticket, plus she was found with 2 credit cards and €2,000. The incident has still never truly been uncovered. What do you guys think though? Suicide or something much darker? In at number 4, Brian Schaefer. A medical student at Ohio State University, Brian seemed to have it all going for him. However, on the night of March 31st, 2006, while out celebrating the beginning of spring break with some friends, Brian got separated. His friends assumed he had just gone home, but that wasn't the case. CCTV footage caught him at the entrance to a bar talking to 2 women just before 2 AM, before he re-entered the bar. However, Schaefer never exited. He was never seen or heard from again by anyone. Investigators were completely perplexed by the case, as there were no public exits accessible from within the bar. So where did he go? Foul play has been suspected by the police. Even one of Schaefer's friends was suspected after his refusal to take a lie detector test. However, others believe that Schaefer could still be out there somewhere, living a new life. What do you guys think?
Number 3, UFO sighting. In December 29, 1980, Betty Cash saw something on the outskirts of Houston near Dayton that would change the course of her life forever, as she made a close encounter of the third kind. She was driving her friend Vicky Landrum and Landrum's grandson home one night at 9 PM when the 3 of them noticed a bright light in the sky. Betty Cash described it like this: "We didn't know what it was, but we knew there was something that was lighting up the sky. We all began to feel heat, and all of a sudden Vicky screamed for me to stop. When I stopped, I went forward and her handprint was embedded in the dash of the car, and I thought, well, I've got to see what this is. So I got out, I walked towards the front of the car, and I stood there looking up, trying to figure out what this object was. Then a diamond-shaped object appeared with flames shooting out. The heat was tremendous. When I reached for the door handle, the door was so hot I couldn't even begin to open it. The only thing I was thinking was, are we gonna get out of here alive? And then seemingly as soon as it appeared, it disappeared, and Landrum stated that moments later, a large squadron of black helicopters soared over the area. After the choppers cleared, Betty took the Landrums home and retired for the night. The next morning, however, Cash said she was extremely sick, suffering from nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, and an intense burning in her eyes. Now here's where things get curious. Landrum and her grandson all reported the exact same symptoms. Over the next few days, Cash said her symptoms worsened so much, with large blisters forming on her skin, she eventually had to be taken to a hospital where she was treated for radiation poisoning, and she lost large patches of skin and clumps of hair. To date, there has never been a conclusive answer to what happened to Cash and Landrum. The US government denied any involvement and said they don't have any diamond-shaped crafts like that in their fleet, and it wasn't from their government. Was the military testing new technology on unsuspecting victims? Was it a craft from another world touching down for a moment? There are so few answers and so many questions for this unsolved mystery. Number 2, the death fields. There is a stretch of I-45 highway between Houston and Galveston that is notorious to locals due to the string of violent, horrific crimes that have all occurred there since the 1970s. Since the first body was discovered, it's been thought that anywhere from 33 bodies have been discovered there, and the truly horrifying thing is how little police and authorities seem to have on this case. Initially, detectives believed that this work was that of a serial killer, due to the sheer number of bodies being found in the area, but over time some have wondered if it could be multiple criminals. Most of the victims have been young women, typically around college ages. The FBI has said that the agency's behavioral experts have created a profile of a possible killer, but there are no known witnesses to any of the crimes and no common person to connect them all. An official statement that was given by the FBI said that the signs point to one killer, although multiple killers can't be ruled out. Given the nature of the area where the bodies were found, it was likely someone with roots in the area, someone who would have known these fields were a good place to hide a body. In 1998, a man named Edward Howard Bell was arrested and claimed to have been involved in the deaths of 11 girls in Galveston County. And although he was a suspect in the aforementioned I-45 case, police unfortunately didn't have enough evidence to tie him to those larger crimes. Only one death on the I-45 was ever convicted, when Louisiana police arrested Kevin Edison Smith in 2009 on a completely unrelated charge. A DNA test found that it matched the body of a girl who had disappeared from Texas in 1996 and whose body was tragically found on the I-45. From this confession and conviction from 2 different criminals, it's suspected that multiple people were involved in these grisly crimes. Hopefully one day this case can be closed for good and the I-45 can go back to just being a highway. And number 1, the Servant Girl Annihilator. Perhaps one of the most infamous criminals to ever live in Austin, and to this day is still anonymous and possibly will forever. The Servant Girl Annihilator, absolutely brutally named, I cannot believe they called him that, was a serial killer who preyed on young women in Austin between 1884 and 85. He is thought by some to be America's first serial killer, hardly a badge of honor if you ask me. He attacked wantonly, and despite his name, he was not exclusively targeting women. He fatally attacked 7 women, 1 man, and additionally seriously injured 6 women and 2 men. All of his victims he would attack indoors while asleep and then would finish the job outside, leaving them to be found. His victims were all posed in similar manners and were all found with a sharp object inserted into their ears. Texan lawman started a manhunt for the criminal, arresting 400 men in the year of 85 in a desperate attempt for any leads on who was terrorizing the community. Interestingly, the top theory of elected officials at the time was that the Servant Girl Annihilator couldn't possibly have been committing all of these crimes by himself as one lone deranged criminal, but rather an identity shared by a group of men carrying out heinous acts all together. Now, in the end, no one was ever successfully accused of being the Servant Girl Annihilator. And what happened to him was additional police patrols and civilian militias around Austin ended up scaring the Annihilator off. Or So you think. A theory, although an outlandish one, is that the servant girl annihilator would move to London to continue his crimes, as 3 years later, the Whitechapel killings would start and Jack the Ripper would terrorize the streets of London, leading to some people suspecting that maybe these two lunatics were connected in a way. Think about that, a globe-trotting serial killer wasn't content with just one, had to move, get two different scary nicknames. Imagine if both your nicknames were Servant Girl Annihilator and Jack the Ripper. A little much for one guy, if you ask me.
Coming in our number 5 spot, NASA hack. Back in 2002, a man named Gary McKinnon was doing some research on the existence of aliens. You know, as one does. But McKinnon took things a little too far when he decided to hack into NASA to try to look up the information that they had on this subject. Because, as we all know, there's so many theories that NASA knows aliens exist, but they're trying to convince people that that's not the case. Yeah, so many conspiracy theories. When trying to get into the computer, McKinnon found a remote desktop connection that had no password protecting it. So obviously he did a little digging. There he found an image of some sort of flying aircraft, but it didn't look like any aircraft he had ever seen before. When the NASA employees noticed what he saw, his access was cut off. So yeah, pretty obvious that NASA didn't want whatever he saw to be seen by the public. Authorities apparently wanted to throw him in jail, claiming that he destroyed government computers and caused a lot of damage. But apparently these accusations were never proven and McKinnon was allowed to go free. And at number 4, Web Driver Torso. This YouTube page hit the internet in September of 2013. On this account, a video was uploaded every minute of every day, and they would last exactly 11 seconds each. Then towards the end, there were a few that lasted 25 minutes. The videos would be filled with red and blue rectangles and a strange beeping sound. Originally, people had no clue what these videos meant or why so many of them were being posted. One conspiracy theorist linked them to number stations, used during the Cold War for communicating with spies. But then in 2014, Google revealed that this was actually a quality test account. But many people aren't buying this. For one thing, it took them a whole year to say this. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. Also, many people are saying that these videos must serve a darker purpose.
Number 3, the Queen Mary. Now this next one is a beloved tourist spot. It's one of the most famous ships in the country, and there are few ships in the United States even half as haunted as the Queen Mary, a decommissioned ship that was converted into a hotel in Long Beach, California. It's stately, it's lush, it's got all the comfort and modern amenities of being a Navy man, bursting with restless spirits. The ship was christened in the mid-30s by the Queen Mary herself. That's why they named her that. And it was retired 3 decades later. It's since been converted into a hotel where guests can go and rent out a stateroom and pretend they're crossing the Atlantic in style. Now, there are a variety of spots inside the Queen Mary that are said to be congregation points for all things supernatural and strange. Perhaps if you know already anything about the Queen Mary, the most famous is Stateroom B340. Now, this was a problem before the place was even haunted. In 1948, a passenger, Walter J. Adamson, passed away in the room under unknown conditions. Nothing really came of this event until 1966, when a woman who was staying in B340 reported that she was woken up when the bed covers were pulled away and she saw a spectral man standing at the foot of her bed, and it was no room service. She screamed and rang for a steward, but as soon as the steward arrived to assess the situation, the man had vanished. Now, guests staying in this room claim they hear someone knock at the door in the middle of the night. The Mary's maids too complain that they find water running in B340 when no one's been in it in days. People have reported all kinds of ghosts around the pool as well. There's a woman in an old wedding gown people say they see, a young boy in a suit, a cloud of steam appearing out of nowhere, and then a girl in a blue and white dress who disappears in an instant, or maybe it's a gold and black dress, I'm not sure. Whatever the case, there's so many ghosts up in the Queen Mary, it's definitely worth checking out if you've got an EMF reader in your suitcase when you're going to California. Number 2, Griffith Park. Now, if you're a real avid cinephile, a student of the silver screen, perhaps you'd recognize Griffith Park for its use in a ton of Hollywood productions. The sprawling, rugged, mountainous set is home to a lot more than memorabilia for Hollywood. It's also said to be home to spirits and haunted by a century-old curse. It's said to have started all the way back in 1863, when Donna Petronilla, the niece of land baron Don Antonio Feliz, was cut out of her will. She was spurned and placed a hex on his land and cursed him for this indignation. She vowed that the land would never turn a profit for him, and that as long as he lived there, he would suffer misfortune until his untimely death, and anyone who was stupid enough to own the land afterward would get the same treatment. Now, local historians say the man who negotiated the ranch's rights was slain in a saloon duel, and the land's new owner was fatally struck by bandits in Mexico, so not looking good. A wealthy industrialist would end up buying up 4,000 acres of the land in the 1880s, but he ended up donating the land to the city of LA after strife and all sorts of malfeasances were causing problems with his ownership. He ended up striking his wife in a rampage. Now, she survived, but he went to prison for 2 years and passed away almost immediately after his release. Pretty suspicious, pretty strange. The landowners all died in rags, their reputation tarnished, and now that it's LA property, Griffith Park wasn't making anyone particularly rich. Was Donna Petronilla's curse that effective, or just a series of sheer coincidences? There are some who say Donna still watches over the land, ensuring her vengeance is carried out forever. Some visitors to Griffith Park claim that they see her spirit haunting the ground. Her vengeful ghost is said to appear as a lady in an all-white dress who materializes before locals for a moment. And number 1, Mount Shasta. Standing nearly 15,000 feet in the air, Mount Shasta is a beautiful peak. And, if you believe the legends, it could be home to some of the strangest thing in the entire country. Really, just about every conspiracy theory out there has been leveled to this mountain at one point. We got UFO sightings, strange disappearances, paranormal hauntings, a lost city, lizard people. If there is a conspiracy about something strange happening in California, the odds are good it'll eventually reach Mount Shasta. It's even true of GTA 5. You look up Mount Iliad, there's so many weird mysteries going on there. Virtual, real, it's everywhere. The history of mystery at the history of mystery. That rolls off the tongue beauty. The history of mystery. I'm gonna say that like 12 times. Sorry, editor. The history of mystery at Shasta goes back pretty far to the indigenous roots of the area. For the indigenous groups there, the mountain is a sacred place, sharing the territories of the Shasta, Wintu, Achimawai, Atsagewi, and Modoc, who all date their lineage back to when the mountain still erupted. Oh, it was a volcano. I kind of slid that under the door, but this thing used to like shoot lava. To the Modoc people, the mountain is home to the Gamakma, the creator in their stories, and where the original bones of the Modoc people were first placed. Some observers still bring offerings to the mountain and to the old gods who are thought to reside over there. Tales of mythical creatures like Sasquatch are fairly common around the area and have been for years too, but like I said, that is just the tip of all the weirdness that's going on out here. One of the more interesting mysteries, and definitely the one I find most interesting, come out of Shasta is that of a lost city. There are some who speak of Lemuria, a theorized continent believed to have sunk over the Indian or Pacific Ocean. Theorists claim that some people survived this catastrophe and now the Lemurians live below Mount Shasta, presumably waiting until they can come and take over the earth, or maybe they're just chilling with advanced technology. Who's to say? This is where the lizard people come in, because there are people who believe that the Lemurians are actually the fabled lizard people. They live under Mount Shasta, and this is where they come to have meetings about what rap stars they're going to endorse to control the Illuminati. Of course, there's also the claims of UFO sightings. One particular flying saucer seen in February 2020 made rounds when a cloud in the sky looked exactly like a flying saucer, copying Jordan Peele's Nope. Officials denied it as just a lenticular cloud, but hey, take a look and decide for yourself, because it's definitely odd. So Mount Shasta, nothing but a good trail to hike up, or is it a home to a series of mysteries bubbling and bursting, just waiting to erupt?